Welcome back to the 88th online episode of Peacetime, hosted every Sunday morning by Peace Point with myself, Phra Nicholas Thanissaro, coming to you from DIMC in Azusa, California. In the previous session, I reported back on my recent experiences in Indonesia, and today we'll take a further detour from our journey through the Buddhist scriptures to give a little extra explanation about why we might feel justified about sharing spiritual advice with others, even when they may not specifically ask for it. So the session is a rehash of the Sunday morning meditation class at Azusa Temple on November the 5th, 2023. And today I expect today's session to take about an hour with 30 minutes of meditation halfway through. So in terms of responding to the challenges that we are up against in terms of cultivating our spiritual transformation, latterly, most of the topics I've been presenting to you have focused on soft skills or human relations, social skills that may have seemed rather heavy-going for listeners. Of course, as meditators, we have the conviction that meditation has a positive effect on other aspects of our everyday life. The choices and intentionality of our everyday life feed back into the quality of our meditation. Nonetheless, the people around us in the world can sometimes be discouraging to our practice if we can't find a way to connect with them through our practice. Consequently, to reach out to those around us more, some of the topics which I've recently touched upon have included things like friendship, even down to the seemingly insignificant choices like who we might regard as being our besties, or how we might treat others who we regarded as our friends. Some of these topics may perhaps seem a little bit dated or preachy, so for today's session I thought I'd ease up a bit with a topic that can be regarded as a little bit of a pat on the back for your self-esteem after all the heavy-going topics I've been dredging up over the last few sessions. Sometimes if we have a meditation practice, we see the benefits and reach out to others with these benefits, but our input is not appreciated by others. It can shake the confidence we have in our practice. Sometimes we might question ourselves to the point that we wonder whether there's anyone left out there who respects us for our spiritual practice. Okay, there may be a few people who come out and specifically ask you to clarify their spiritual problems. For the most part, if you have admirers out there, they tend to keep themselves pretty secret. If you start doubting whether there's anyone out there who still respects you, it can be quite demotivating. Well, what I want to talk about today is that people's respect for you is not always about big words or grand gestures. Sometimes it's hidden in the little things we tend to overlook. In fact, there are at least 11 telltale signs that indicate you might be more respected than you realize. Where there is respect, then there is an opportunity for others to learn from you. Because for people who meditate and who realize they've benefited personally from the meditation, such as maybe feeling a sense of happiness arising within themselves from meditation, it comes naturally to remember other people who might also gain similar happiness if they had the chance to meditate too. So it's not like we are trying to be an evangelist standing on someone else's doorstep or extolling the wonders of meditation to people who don't appreciate it. But sometimes it comes to mind that other people might also benefit in the same way if they knew more about the meditation technique. It's a natural inclination to share good things. But as was pointed out to me after telling you about the 7 qualities of the good friend, that generally in Western societies, if people want to hear your opinion about things, then they will ask for your advice. If your advice is unsolicited, then generally the word on the ground is to keep your advice to yourself. Otherwise, it would come over as overstepping the appropriate boundaries of your friendship. So if people don't ask for your advice, generally you would not give it, right? But might it also not be the case that some people might be shy, or at least not so upfront about expressing their wish to hear your wise words of wisdom? And apart from boosting your self-confidence today with an appreciation of other people in your life who are maybe silent admirers, who look up to you and appreciate what you do, there's a suggestion that there might be additional people out there who might appreciate some of the wisdom you have, who you hadn't thought about before. So obviously the people who do ask for your advice are ones who would say so expressly. who would actually consult you on your opinion. If this is the case, then generally speaking, you would be in a good place to say something to them. Unless, of course, they need to pay you a confidentiality retainer or you are going to get into something controversial. They obviously see you as someone with good judgment and wisdom. When people value your thoughts and perspectives, it's a clear sign of respect. So, if people are looking for your words of wisdom, then you should have something to share with them, right? If you are a person who has something valuable to say, and I would say that all of you listening in today definitely have something valuable to say, you shouldn't hide your light under a bushel. Sometimes it can be false humility that makes us hesitate and wonder, am I really qualified to say anything here? But I would like to reiterate that all of you have many valuable things to share with other people. It's just a question of the right time and the right place. And I might qualify that by saying that there is possibly a difference between Asian culture and Western culture in terms of individualism and boundaries. In the West, those boundaries are maybe more robust. People may be more reticent with advice than in Asian society, where you constantly get opinions expressed to you, some of which you need to filter out yourself in order to leave yourself with just the really valuable advice. In the meantime, if you find people around you are expressly turning to you for advice or opinions, it is a clear sign that you are respected. The second group of people who you may consider silent admirers are people who hold obvious attention when you speak. There is so much hustle and bustle in everyone's daily lives that genuine attention is like treasure. If people around you tend to quieten down and listen attentively when you speak, it is a sign of respect. It means they value what you have to say and consider your words worth their time. So the next time you're in conversation, notice who's really listening. It might just reveal those who value your words or example. By the same token, if you have something important to say, then generally you would keep your powder dry and wait for the time to say it when people are actually paying attention to you. Not when there is a TV on loudly in the background, people are drunk, or no one is really listening to you anyway. That would not be the time to come up with the sort of worldly wise advice, even if it's good for them. Even if they have asked for it, if they're not attentive, then it's probably not the best time. If you find that people really are making time to listen to you and they are attentive, then that would be the time to share something significant. You might notice from their body language that they respect what you want to say. Or, of course, you can try to get people's attention with phrases like, we need to talk, to signal that you're about to start a conversation that matters. But given that today we're mostly talking about voluntary participation in conversations, if they have created an attention window to listen to you, then you would be justified in taking that opportunity to share advice. A third covert sign that you are secretly respected is when people seem to respect your boundaries, which means that they have respect for you as a person. So sometimes they might not explicitly say, I want your opinion on this. In fact, you see that they are respecting your boundaries. They mean that you're appreciated for more than just making up numbers, and that they may want to hear more from you. So what might I mean by boundaries? Let's say you have an employer who wants you to stay on at work for extra hours, all hours of the day, to continue to put in overtime you didn't really sign up for, when you just signed up for an 8-hour day. Normally that would be considered to be overstepping your boundaries. If you happen to say that you prefer to be able to finish work by 5 p.m. or whatever, and you decide to have a talk with your boss about it, supposing perhaps to your surprise they agree, and adjust your working hours, it would show that you are respected not just for your work, but also as a human being. So if others respect your boundaries, then it shows that you have someone who respects you. Of course, boundaries may come in different guises, but anything basically that's not just about what you say or your professional skills, but also what makes you more comfortable. If it's obvious that people are respecting you in that way, then it's also a sign of respect for you on a deeper level. Some people are surprised to find that people close to them don't seem to respect their boundaries. And it's not because they're bad people, but it might be just because they're not psychic. There was one lady who was telling me, oh, my daughter really treats me in a very inconsiderate way. I asked her, did you ever mention this to her? And she replied, oh, I shouldn't have to say things like that. She's my daughter after all. she should just know these things. And they pointed out to her that maybe their daughter didn't realize how important these things were to her mother. Perhaps if she mentioned it, or she felt, in other words, then their daughter would have a better idea how to behave towards her, and maybe her daughter's lack of consideration wasn't actually intentional, disrespecting her or encroaching on her boundaries. In this connection, they have an interesting thing that's called assertiveness training. Have I heard of that before? It's not the same as aggressiveness training. So assertiveness is basically about putting your point across in a way where you are standing up for yourself. It's not just trying to get in a fight, but sometimes it's just letting people say, hey, hello, I'm here and I'm a person too. And you know, I have boundaries as well. And for anyone who's not familiar with assertiveness training, and so you don't need to pay for expensive management workshops, I'll summarize it for you. Usually on their websites, they keep it fairly vague for commercial reasons. But there are generally three things which you need to explain to people to get them to understand where you're coming from. The first of these is that you have to tell them what they are doing that's upsetting you. So you need to make a liberal use of the words I rather than just an unspecific or passive statement like, what you're doing is just wrong. So you need to say, I think that this is not correct, like, you are constantly giving me lots of overtime when I specifically said I didn't want that at the interview. Secondly, you need to tell them how their behavior makes you feel, like, I'm tired at the end of the day. I don't have the energy to do the best of my job anymore. So how their transgression makes you feel. So you are adding your feelings to the equation. Thirdly, you need to tell them what you would prefer that they did instead. So you request that they do something differently for the first two reasons. This is what's known as assertiveness training. If you verbalize this, then the person now has a very clear idea about how they can do better. Maybe they really didn't realize before. Maybe they weren't really intending to annoy you or to make your life a misery, but now they have a clear idea. So you put it on the table for them. What they do with this information, that's their affair. You can hope that things will get better as a result. Often people are just oblivious to what you care about. They're so caught up in their own concerns. But moving forward, they will be much better informed. So this is part of establishing the boundaries in the case that those people don't have that respect for you. So what we're looking for here is the people who do have the respect for us, who maybe we didn't realize about before. If they don't happen to have that respect, but it doesn't seem intentional, then we also have the option to assert ourselves to improve the situation. On the contrary, if people around you do respect your boundaries and personal space, it's a clear sign that they have high regard for you. It shows that they value your comfort and well-being as well as your contributions. The fourth telltale sign of covert respect is when people are happy to give you responsibilities. So again, they might not be asking explicitly for your words of advice, but that they trust you with certain things generally can be considered a compliment. Being trusted with responsibilities, big or small, is a powerful indicator of respect. It means people believe in your skills, judgment, and integrity. If you find yourself often in charge of projects, it's not just because you're capable, it's also a reflection of the trust and respect others have for you. Some people protest, oh no, not more work. Why do they keep giving me all this stuff to do the whole time? Actually, it's a compliment that they trust you enough to get it done. So actually, you must have secret admirers who are giving you all this work. If they're not giving you the work, then that would be something to worry about, because it would show that they don't trust you. For example, I'm not a native speaker of Thai language, but Thai people trust me to do a lot of things that generally only Thai people would get to do. And sometimes I think, oh, actually, I would be better doing things in English translation. But actually, it's quite a compliment in itself that they allow me to do many of the things that normally they would reserve for themselves. Sometimes I hadn't considered things from this perspective before. So, if you are able to embrace those responsibilities with pride, it's a testament to the respect you've earned. And as a person with an input to those tasks, you have more chance to shape the work that you're doing. A fifth telltale sign of secret admiration is having your kindness appreciated. Kindness, although a seemingly simple trait, holds immense power. It's a sort of soft diplomacy that everyone understands. If you're someone who expresses kindness and empathy, and you notice it's consistently acknowledged and appreciated by those around you, consider it a significant sign of respect. Especially if you have done something nice or gone out of your way to do something for someone else. If people show their appreciation of what you've done, then it's generally a sign of respect for you. It's said that not all people express their appreciation in the same way, so you might not get a handwritten Hallmark card from every person who you help. Sometimes you have to remain observant to spot the appreciation. I don't mean actively seeking out compliments, but you might have to look a little bit deeper. For example, some people never say thank you, but you'll notice that a while later they've copied what you've done, or in some cases even plagiarized it. Apparently, imitation is the lowest form of flattery. So, if you look at it in the right way, you might be quite flattered by the input that you've made. And for spiritual matters, generally getting the credit for things is not the main point. Sometimes the recognition you get for your kindness hints at the respect that they have for you. At the very least, they see the beauty in your empathy and the strength in your compassion. And this acknowledgement is a heartwarming validation of the respect that they have for you. So if you keep spreading that kindness, you may find that it's making a bigger impact than you originally predicted. So having reached the halfway mark in our telltale signs of secret admiration, let's take a break halfway and settle ourselves for 30 minutes of meditation, which today is our recent meditation track called The Mind is a Mirror. If at this time you would like to find a comfortable sitting position for yourself as you listen to my guidance. So we can start by getting ourselves comfortable, sitting calmly for a moment, and gently closing our eyes. Seeing as there's no rush, we can take as long as we need to get settled. For now, we don't actually need to do anything. It's enough just to be, just to exist in our body, just to be alongside all the other living, breathing manifestations of life on this planet. And when we're ready, our practice might be simply to notice, noticing our thoughts, noticing our body and our body sensations, noticing our environment. Nothing needs to be changed or responded to. For now we just notice, noticing and accepting, noticing things as they are and letting them be. To fully relax our shoulders, we might just shrug fully and then let our shoulders drop back to their natural height. We might lengthen up through our spine, beyond the crown of our head, while simultaneously drawing down into our seat. We can rest the backs of our hands across our lap, while tucking our right index finger lightly under the tip of our left thumb, and turning to relax our state of mind. Even without calling forth pictures in the mind, we'll probably notice visual images coming unbidden to the mind. The faces of loved ones, our homes, other familiar places, previous meals or replays of movies. Such images arise spontaneously throughout the day, but we are often too engrossed in external sensations to notice them. And each night our mind becomes a dream theater, where we interact with fictitious scenarios and people. Visualization or imagination is therefore a mental technique we are all familiar with. But unless we work in the visual arts, we will have little or no control over our ability. But in meditation, we become increasingly able to channel and harness this ability. When you are new to meditation, it may even seem impossible to internalize the mind within the body, because we're not used to bringing the mind inside the body. Normally our awareness is pulled away from us by the sights, sounds, tastes and touches from the outside world, or the tendency to keep on thinking without end. The moment we try to keep the mind in one place at the center of the body, we'll find it difficult. It's difficult for adults, but easier for children who have a nervous system that still hasn't been hardened up by the way they are trained to think in the school system. If you ask a 6-year-old to meditate, visualizing at the center of the body, they are able to do it naturally. They just observe without thinking, which means that their mind is easily stilled. And together with that innocence of mind, they are able to reach attainments in their meditation easily. In contrast, adults spend their whole time thinking about what to do, what they want, how they're going to get it, where they're going to get it from, and from whom they're going to get it. This constant thinking leaves the mind clouded. As we get older, this way of deploying the mind becomes habitual. So the adult mind is not as flexible as a child's, and the pressure of constant thinking leads to stress. We shouldn't despair nonetheless, as adults are still able to get the same results as children with practice. If we're new to meditation, we may just need to de-school the mind and get back in touch with our inner child. The mind has often been compared to a mirror. For one thing, even a mirror the size of the palm of your hand can reflect the whole of a mountain. In the same way, a mind can contain infinite levels of awareness. What's more, whatever object comes before a mirror does not affect the mirror itself, and the mirror does not affect the object. So, like a mirror, we can learn to treat thoughts and images with equanimity by learning not to judge them. We need to avoid the misapprehension that meditation is about trying to stop thoughts. If you can relate to thoughts, treating them like a mirror treats reflections, then whether thoughts are there or not, the mind remains clear like a mirror or the sky, thereby freeing the mind. Rather than being inert, it's like taking in information in a peripheral way. It's the same as how we can tell whether the person sitting next to us is young or old, male or female, even without looking directly at them. It's like seeing without looking. It's like we are looking just with our awareness, or looking right through an object, or just like letting the images play on the surface of the mind, like an undistorted mirror reflection. So we direct our mind with the utmost gentleness, taking in information as if we weren't actually looking. Seeing without looking is like watching a furtive wild animal that will be scared off the moment we blink. So we don't concentrate on it even with our awareness, but just look straight on through, with the same sort of lightness of awareness that is more akin to subtly covering the object with a sprinkling of fairy dust. And if we need to make use of a mantra to keep our thoughts in place, the sound of the mantra Samma Arahang should be light and gentle, just resounding naturally from our mind, In any case, before long, the level of cloudedness in the mind will diminish to the point that we are okay with it. And when we sit for meditation on subsequent occasions, we will start to have the feeling of spaciousness inside, lightness inside, as if our whole body has disappeared, or as if we've lost track of time. This is the starting point of meditation proper, although it's only weak concentration at this stage, technically known as momentary mindfulness or Khanika Samadhi. But we continue to train ourselves further in the hope of mastering meditation that is more subtle still, to allow us to learn about the truth of life and the world, to help us overcome suffering or gain a refuge in life. Consistent daily practice in our meditation will lead us to the breakthrough we seek, where we reach a turning point that can sometimes take just a fraction of a second, when the mind is able to reach a standstill in meditation. But for now we continue in this way, lightly and gently for a few more moments in silence, until we come to the appropriate time. So we continue to keep our mind on track at our center, gently reflecting the experiences in the mind, like a mirror with its reflections. Monks from the forest tradition used to advise that we should just let the mind do as it wants, just watching without reacting to new experiences, not taking the bait for things that come into contact with our senses. We need to regard all impressions as just more of the same. Let them come and go without fighting them. Keeping the mind in the present rather than thinking about what we're going to do tomorrow. If at all times we just observe the characteristics of things in the present moment, this will allow our mind to gain true equanimity. If we find we are inadvertently involving our eyesight in the meditation process, we need to take special care that we are not angling our eyes down towards the center of our body. We need to make sure our eyes are still facing forward. If we are focusing our eyes at the center of the body, the more we try to focus, the more pressure we will be putting on our eyes, and the more stressed we will become across our forehead. And the meditation will just tire us out. Actually, we should just disconnect from our eyesight. Or if this doesn't work, then just imagine we are looking out of a dormer window to a distant horizon. Even though our eyes are directed forwards, looking at the view, but with our mind we are reaching out to our center solely with our awareness. So when we are meditating, we need to take care not to put pressure on our eyes. Our eyes should not be directed differently just because we are meditating. They should remain at the same angle we'd use to look in front of us, even though our eyes are closed. And of course we need to remain patient. If we are not able to achieve the lightness we require today, we can simply try again tomorrow. But in the meantime, we just keep on training ourselves both inside our meditation practice and between sessions. Because there are no shortcuts on the journey towards stillness. At the same time, we need to adjust the mind every time we sit for meditation, while noticing what more our mind needs. In effect, all it takes is consistency. And if we find that the seventh base of the mind is not the best place for us to focus, we can always start from a different place inside the body, anywhere that brings us contentment. Or we might consider that the center of the body has enlarged to the size of the whole room, or to the horizon. In the meantime, we just bring our mind to anywhere that feels right for us. Sometimes there may appear to be light that comes and goes. It may or may not be a sphere of light. It may appear in front of us, or to the sides, or even behind us. But we don't react to it. We just reflect it like a mirror. We play hard to get, not letting the mental object ensnare our attention. We pretend not to be interested, even though it may fascinate us. Otherwise, if we focus on it, it will disappear. So we just remain in stillness, watching with peripheral vision. And when it's ready, then it will come to our center in its own time. So we continue in this way, lightly and gently, for a few more moments in silence until we come to time for some loving kindness meditation. So we continue in an unhurried way, taking a moment to allow the inner experience that we have built up today as a result of our meditation to manifest into positive and compassionate intentions for ourselves and others. Just allowing these intentions of goodwill to seep into our subconscious little by little, helping to rewrite the thoughts that arise from the subconscious and remind us of the positive truths that we may have forgotten somewhere along the way, in the same way we allow the breath to nourish our body. So we extend compassion for ourselves by reminding ourselves that everything about us is enough and just as it should be, that we are already whole, confident and courageous, that we are generous in sharing our loving kindness and letting it flow, that we are grateful for our body and the life it allows us, that we are grateful for our vitality, wisdom and intuition, that we are grateful for the experiences we have already gained, that we are loved, lovable, safe and supported. We can secretly admire ourselves for how far we have already come, how much we have already learned, that we are worthy of love, success, happiness, the kindness, care and respect of others, that we believe in ourselves even when no one else does, that we were born with everything we need inside to find our way through life, that we may be well and happy, free from distress and worry, free from ill will, that our hearts be filled with loving kindness, compassion and sympathetic joy. And having put ourselves in a good place, we extend loving kindness beyond ourselves, in ever-widening circles, with the wish that all living beings be well and happy. May they too be free from distress and worry. May their minds be free from ill will. May their hearts be filled with love. Although goodwill towards certain others at this stage may feel artificial and contrived, the recognition of our negative feelings and the desire to wish to transform them into positive feelings is important. In time, indifference will change into equanimity, and from equanimity into friendliness and concern, when, through the practice of the meditation on loving kindness, we learn to shrug off insults rather than get angry, to forgive rather than plot revenge, and to be kind rather than rude, officious, or uncaring, our interactions with others will become considerably more enjoyable, and our life will become subjectively happier. We'll become more able to put aside our own self-interest for the sake of others, to act out of loving kindness, to free up our time to help those in need. Manifesting these pure intentions will eventually become as much a part of the meditation on loving kindness as sitting quietly with our legs crossed. So we extend our good wishes further for the wider world, opening a mind of compassion to living beings in all their diversity, for the earth as a whole, for the entire infinite and mysterious universe. For a few more moments now in silence. สัพพพุทธานุภาเวนะสัพพธัมมานุภาเวนะสัพพสังฆานุภาเวนะสัทธาโสธีภะวันทุเต So if you'd like to come to the end of your meditation for today, you can gradually open your eyes again. If you feel at all uncomfortable, then slowly try changing to a more comfortable position before gradually finishing your practice. So to gently return to our subject matter for today of telltale signs of secret admiration, we pick up again with the sixth of 11 signs that you are respected, namely when others involve you in important collective decisions. So decisions in question take place in your presence rather than behind your back, right? Supposing you are included in an important team decision at work, it feels like a clear sign of respect from your colleagues. They value your opinion and trust you to contribute something significant. If you find yourself being included in a big decision, whether at work or amongst friends or family, it's an unmistakable sign of respect. It shows that your thoughts and opinions are valued and people trust your judgment. On the contrary, if you're left out of a decision, then it's a pretty clear sign that you're being sidelined, and you should probably keep your opinions to yourself. One of the most counterintuitive decisions I got left out of was the pilot project in Chicago from 2021 to 2023 for meditation teaching for Westerners in America. You might think I had some valid opinions on that one. Well, apparently not. It was one of those subjects where Thai people know best. So all the consultation for the pilot project went on completely behind my back, and I was quite surprised about that, but obviously I wasn't respected enough for that one. On the more optimistic side, when it didn't really experience much of a success, I suppose that it was a relief for me not to be apportioned any of the blame. By the opposite token, if you are included in something that turns out a success, then generally it's a good sign. Although it can seem arduous to be roped into a decision-making process, remember that it's not just because you're part of a team, but it's also a sign of the respect you've earned. Another sign of being respected is that people accept your flaws or your shortcomings. And by that I mean the ones that you can't really do anything about, probably ones that aren't actually that bad. But if you notice that people accept you for who you are, warts and all, generally then that's a sign that they respect you. To give a personal example of this sort of respect, like I said just now, my second language skills are not always 100%. But if I find I'm accepted anyway, then it would generally be a sign that I am respected as a person. And the personal example of this might be a tendency towards introversion that I have in my creative process, which has both advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is that I can focus on the detail of new content for the things that I teach, maybe more than some of my extroverted colleagues. The downside of this is that I need to have a certain degree of uninterrupted time to really get into depth on things. Also, I tend to take a little bit longer to transition than some of my colleagues between different sorts of activities like yard work, of which this temple has quite a lot, and meditation teaching. Although introversion might seem like a flaw to some other people who rib me for not being constantly available to the public, for me, people accept this because the work comes out if I'm allowed to have that time to focus on work that does require more concentration. So when people see your imperfections and still choose to respect you, then that's when you know it's genuine. If those around you can accept your flaws, understand your mistakes, and still hold you in high regard, then it's a powerful sign of respect. Moving on to the eighth telltale secret sign that you are respected, because time is one of the resources that is precious to everyone. When people willingly give you their time, it's a strong sign of respect. Nonetheless, you will need to distinguish between the people who want to talk to you because they have free time and the people who make free time to talk to you, which would indicate a slightly different level of respect. Spending quality time is one of the top ways people show love and respect. If you notice people making time for you in their busy schedules, taking moments to check in on you, or simply spending time with you, it shows they respect and value you enough to share their most precious resource. When someone takes time out for you, you can consider that more than just a friendly gesture, but it's also a sign of genuine respect. A ninth sign of reciprocal admiration from others is not being taken for granted by them. Let's say you've helped another person and they seem appreciative. Generally, that would be a sign of respect. Sometimes all your hard work volunteering for a local charity event can be made worthwhile if you receive sincere gratitude from the organizers and participants, because it makes you realize that they haven't been taking you for granted. In the old days, if you sent an email to someone with something that they'd asked for, they would send a reply saying, "Thank you for replying promptly. The information you sent me is just what I needed." These days, the only reason you'll hear back from them is if you forgot the attachment. Don't know if this is normal and it's not expected to acknowledge help given anymore. Maybe in my outdated way, I'm just being paranoid. But these days, it seems to be increasingly acceptable that once people have got what they wanted from you, then they just drop you. So that might be a sign of not being respected. By the opposite token, if people around you appreciate your efforts and don't take your contributions lightly, it's a sign of respect. They recognize the value you bring, and they don't just expect your input as a given. If you find yourself being sincerely thanked for your efforts, generally it's a sign that you've earned their respect. So how are we doing here? Well, we come to the second to last telltale sign that we are respected, which is when you find that someone has stuck up for you behind your back. It's pretty common for people to be talked about behind their back, but when it's you and you find that someone has gone out of their way to defend you when you're not around, that's respect in its purest form. I had one example of being trolled on social media, but wasn't even aware of the fact because I usually don't bother reading those feeds. What I didn't realize was that a disgruntled employee of our organization, an ex-monk in fact, who had gone off and done his own thing, I won't mention names, had claimed that the Dhammakaya organization is not really very internationally minded because they never let that monk Nicholas be promoted to abbot. So you might have your own thoughts on this, but actually the reason I was never promoted was that I never wanted to be an abbot. After due consideration, I realized long ago that abbots get their time taken up by a lot of very boring things, like signing off on expense claims, having meetings all day long, and making sure everyone turns up to pull weeds in the temple backyard. So I decided pretty early on that this is not what I want to spend my life doing if I have a choice in the matter. I would much prefer to be doing research or putting finishing touches to my next lecture so that it isn't quite as boring as this one. But what I didn't realize is that another student of mine actually went off and called that call out on all the inaccuracies in their arguments, even without me realizing it. He basically pulled the rug out from under them. So this would be taken as an example of a sign of respect which I hadn't previously realized, which maybe counts for more than maybe people saying, "Oh, I respect you." So defending your name behind your back, in other words. If your friends or colleagues stand up for you when you're not there to do it yourself, then they're showing a deep level of respect for you. It means they value your reputation and they think highly of you. If you ever hear about someone defending your name in your absence, know that their respect for you runs deep. And the final telltale sign of respect is if you find that you've been an inspiration to others, especially if someone reminds you of a particular previous actions or words by which you have motivated them or sparked a change in their lives. It's as if they don't just have admiration for you, but they have enough respect for you to let your influence guide them. It is something which I don't know if you have much experience of for yourself, but because I tend to be on the podium quite often giving talks like this one, of course it's rather an inexact science dispensing inspiration to other people, right? One size doesn't fit all. Nonetheless, sometimes particular words you've said really hit home for certain members of an audience, whereas other words of wisdom just go completely in one ear and come out the other. I remember one particular member here in Azusa once said, "I wonder if you remember those words which you told me back in 2018. And I said something like, "Of course I remember, but why don't you go ahead and remind me of exactly what I said?" And he said, "Yes, you were talking about how Gen Z kids weren't just snowflakes, as many people make them out to be," because he'd made some casual comment about Gen Zs not being serious in the workplace and they can't save up to buy their own homes and they just sort of play around all day long. And I had suggested that humility comes from finding fault with yourself rather than finding fault with others. And the guy said, "Wow, what you answered really changed my opinion." And he could still remember this 3 or 4 years later. So it was only then that I realized I'd said something inspiring to this person. I didn't even realize the importance of what I was saying at the time. It may be that it's only when you get such feedback that you realize that what you've said has actually made a difference in people's lives. In my experience, it's not that often, I should add, because I tend to go for more general effects rather than targeting particular people with quotable aphorisms or whatever. Certainly, if you're the sort of person who can inspire others with words which you've said, this is something which really adds to the group of people who have that latent respect for you, and it should encourage you to want to share more advice with them in the future. It's an honest sign of the positive impact you're making. So if someone tells you that you've inspired them, cherish it. It's one of the purest forms of respect. So in conclusion, although it may seem rather contrived to be a good friend to others, according to the 7 qualities of the Kalyana Mitta, which I've spoken about in previous sessions, if you know who has latent respect for you, you might be less hesitant about reaching out to them with wisdom and advice. Even though you might not have been invited specifically to share particular advice or knowledge, but you'll be more aware of the group of people out there who are grateful, thankful, or appreciative for the things which you might say to them and exemplify. So for today, we've been looking at telltale signs of secret admirers or confirmation that you are respected. For my next live session online, which will, fingers crossed, be a week on Sunday morning, we'll make our way back to our studies of important illuminated texts within the Buddhist scriptures, particularly the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. So, for good measure, I'd like to remind viewers to keep the questions coming on meditation or topics you've heard in the lecture to the email address you can see spelled out on the slide, and I'll do my best to answer these on my next session. In the meantime, try to avoid a recklessness or complacency, maintain a positive mood, speak only positive words, forgive others, extend good wishes to others, and meditate daily. Hopefully, as a result of today's session, you will feel more valued and be more courageous in reaching out spontaneously to others with your spiritual wisdom. So that's all for today. Thanks for viewing. So long, folks, and stay safe.